Welcome to the course on administering MySQL in Linux. In this tutorial, we'll dive deep into all aspects of MySQL user management, from setting up MySQL on Linux, creating and managing user accounts, to assigning permissions and roles. Whether you are looking to understand MySQL permissions, manage user accounts remotely, or secure your MySQL setup, this course will provide a comprehensive guide. We'll also explore practical demos, giving you real-world skills to confidently administer users in a MySQL environment. Let's get started on the path to becoming proficient in MySQL user administration. In this video, we'll show you how to install Ubuntu on your Windows machine using WSL2. You'll be able to run Linux commands seamlessly alongside Windows. First, let's enable WSL2 on Windows. Go to search and type turn Windows features on or off. Expand this. Next, we will select Windows Subsystem for Linux and Virtual Machine Platform. We will click OK. Windows is prompting us to restart our device, so we will restart now. After the restart is done, we will set WSL to use version 2 by default. Then we will copy paste this command into the terminal. The operation was completed successfully. We can see our current distros by using the WSL-list command. There are no installed distributions, and as I mentioned, we can install them by visiting the Microsoft Store. Let us go. Once the Microsoft Store is open, we can search Ubuntu. We can download Ubuntu from here. Click Get. Once that is finished, we will click Open. So we got this error, distribution failed, with this error. This is not a difficult error to fix. First, we will type WSL-update. Then we will install Ubuntu with the command WSL-install distro Ubuntu. We will wait some moments for this to install. We are prompted to give it a new Unix username. I will give it the name techm. Next, we are prompted to give a password. Please remember these credentials, guys. Now we are logged in as user techm and we can now use Ubuntu on Windows. We can check the version of Ubuntu with this command. We can check the Linux kernel version with this command. We can update package lists with this command. This is why you should remember your credentials in order to use the sudo command. So that's it. You've successfully installed Ubuntu on Windows using WSL2. Now you can run Linux commands right from your Windows machine. If you found this helpful, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you and have a great day. Hi guys, today I'm going to show you a step-by-step guide to installing MySQL Community Edition on Linux. I'm going to be hosting the Linux operating system on an EC2 instance from AWS. Let's get started. First, I'll open EC2. Actually, before you get started, you need to have a Windows subsystem for Linux working on your Windows device, or you need to be on a Mac. That's how I'm going to be proceeding with this. If you don't have that, I have a previous video showing you how to set that up. It's pretty simple. All you just search up is if you don't turn Windows features on or off. And then you just click the two boxes. You click Windows Subsystem for Linux and Virtual Machine Platform. Then it will prompt you to restart the device, and then that'll be all set up if you don't have it set up. First, I'll create a new instance. I will make a EC2 instance. It'll all be in the free tier. I'll call it demo. I'll browse more AMIs. I'm going to go with the Amazon Linux 2 AMI. This is the image that will be installed onto our EC2 instance. It will be imitating a CentOS Red Hat Enterprise Linux operating system. For the key pair, just for demonstration, I might as well just make a new one. I'll call it whatever I want. I'll just call it key 5. I'm going to SSH into this EC2 instance, so now it's in my downloads folder. Make sure you allow SSH traffic from anywhere. Otherwise, you won't be able to SSH into the VM. I might as well put 30 gigabytes. It stays in the free tier. Also, guys, keep in mind, I'm using T2 Micro, which is free tier eligible, so I won't be charged for this. That is all. We will launch the instance. The instance is running. Now I will open up a new terminal. First, I will enter the Ubuntu system on Windows. So that's just WSL-D. Next, I downloaded that key. Key 5. I'm going to copy it into my Ubuntu file system so that I can SSH into the VM. I've already made a folder on this in this Ubuntu file system called key. So I'm going to copy it into this folder. So we just use the cp command. Then it's the source folder. So in order to access the Windows file system from our Ubuntu file system, we always have to use the mount because it's mounted onto the system. Mount C drive, users, techm, downloads, and then key5.pem. And we're going to, the destination will be in the home key directory. I got to do sudo. Put the password. And there is key 5 right there. Next, let's go to the instructions so that we can SSH into my machine. Not instant state, we gotta connect. So we got to do this change mode, because if the permissions are too open on your key, it's not considered secure. So we're going to do sudo in front of this. Okay, that's done. And then we SSH into it. Not you. Now we're going to SSH into it. So again, put sudo in front of it. Yes. And there we go. We are now in EC2. We are logged in as EC2 user at this IP. We can see more details about our VM if we run this cat, if we read more into this folder using the cat command. So as you can see, ID is like CentOS, Red Hat Enterprise, Linux, Fedora. So that's the OS we're going to be installing MySQL Community onto. I will provide all the commands for this so that it's super easy for you to follow along. First, we will download the MySQLite repository package using this command. Next, we will install the MySQL repository locally. Sudo yum local install MySQL community release. Yes. It is complete. Next, we will import the public key for MySQL8. Next, we will install the MySQL server. Yes. Yes. Oh, we get this failing package because I made a mistake when I imported the public key. Here I put 2022. You want it to be 2023. There. I'll make sure that this is correct in the commands that I will give to you so that you don't get this error. So once again, we'll have to install MySQL server. But if you didn't get that error, you don't need to. Yes. As you can see, it's taking longer because it's actually able to install all the packages. And we got the complete message this time, no message of failures. Next, we will enable the MySQL service to auto restart on reboot. Systemctl enable MySQL daemon service. Next, we will start the MySQL service. We can check the status of the MySQL service. There you have it. It is running. We can get the process ID of the MySQL service. There it is, 3C3635. We can see if we are listening for connections on port 3306. You should, if you don't know, port 3306 is the port MySQL uses. We are listening for connections. We can list all of the files being used by the MySQL user. All of these files are being used right now by MySQL. So we can clearly see it is running. And that concludes our step-by-step guide to installing MySQL 8 Community Edition on Linux. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Now that we have MySQL installed, let's go ahead and secure our MySQL installation. First, we must access the root password. We can find it in this directory in this file. So this is the root password. It needs to get reset to whatever we decide. There is a script there is an executable that we get called MySQL secure installation. We can use the which command to determine the path of this script. We will find it here. This second command provides information about the script's file type. We can see that it is a 64-bit executable file designed for GNU/Linux systems, which uses shared libraries and is optimized for performance by being stripped of unnecessary information. Next, we can run the MySQL secure installation script. Let's go ahead and we can run it with this sudo in front of it. We are being prompted to enter the current password for the root user. Copy it, paste it, enter. We are being prompted now to reset the password, set a new password. Make sure your password is complex enough, having special characters being long enough, and having numbers in it so that you don't run into any problems. Let us confirm it. We are being prompted if we want to change the password. Yes. 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 Do we want to remove anonymous users? Yes. Do we want to disallow remote root login? Yes. So this means that I can't log in as the root user from another device, which is better for security. Do you want to remove the test database? Say yes. Do you want to reload privilege tables? Yes. Now we are all done. Let's go ahead and log into MySQL to verify if we can access it. So we will do MySQL. Host is going to be localhost because we're logged into the device having the MySQL installation. User is root, and we can just put password like this and we will be prompted for it. And there we go. We are in. Let's go ahead and do a quick select statement to retrieve and display the hostname, server ID, and version of the MySQL server and confirm that it's running correctly. So we will do hostname, server underscore ID, version. This SQL command retrieves and displays the hostname, server ID, and version of the MySQL server, confirming that it is running correctly. There's our hostname, server ID, and version. And there you have it. That is the tutorial on securing your MySQL installation. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe for more tutorials, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Welcome to this new section of the course on MySQL user administration. Until now, we've been working with only the root account on the local host, but you might be wondering when we will get the chance to log in remotely as a non-root user. Well, that time has come. In this section, we will create our first non-root DB account to allow remote logins. You'll learn how to connect through regular MySQL client or the graphical tool like MySQL Workbench. We will also cover the with grant option, an essential privilege that every DBA should understand. Next, we'll divide roles, discussing the differences between roles and users. Next, we'll dive into roles, discussing the differences between roles and users, and how to make use of roles for easier administration. Interestingly, roles aren't stored in a separate data dictionary, but are defined in the same MySQL.user data dictionary table as users. We'll explore how to grant permissions to roles and then assign those roles to users, simplifying user administration. You'll also see how to lock and unlock accounts, create expired accounts, and set up users so that their passwords must be changed upon first login. This section is packed with practical demos, so let's get started. Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to cover MySQL permissions. Before we dive into the details, it is important to understand two core principles: authentication and authorization. Permissions play a vital role in database management as they control what actions users can and cannot perform. First, let's clarify authentication versus authorization. Authentication is the process of verifying your identity when you connect to a MySQL server, typically using a username and password. Authorization defines what actions you are allowed to perform once you are authenticated. It's managed through permissions, also known as privileges, that determine what operations you can execute in MySQL. Let's look at the key types of MySQL permissions or privileges. All. This grants all possible permissions on a specified object. For example, if you grant all on a database, the user can perform any operation within that database. Alter. This allows modifications to database structures like tables or indexes. Drop. This lets the user delete tables, databases, indexes, or even other users. Create. This enables the user to create new tables, databases, or other objects. Execute. This is required for running stored procedures in MySQL. To allow a user to execute a stored procedure, this permission is necessary. Next, we have data modification permissions, which control access to rows or data within tables. Insert grants the ability to add new records, update allows modifications to existing records, and delete permits deletion of records. These permissions provide granular control over data manipulation in specific tables or databases. MySQL also allows you to apply permissions on specific objects like databases or tables. Instead of listing each table individually, you can use an asterisk to represent all tables in a database. For example, granting permissions on database.asterisk applies them to all tables in the database. There are permissions specifically for users who only need to view data. Select provides read-only access to query data from tables. Show lets users view metadata such as table structures without modifying data. These are known as read-only permissions because they allow users to view but not change the data. MySQL includes replication permissions for managing database replication. Replication slave or replication replica allows the starting and stopping replication, which is essential for managing replica databases. These permissions are crucial if a user needs to handle replication tasks. Permissions are assigned using the grant keyword. For example, you might use a command like grant select on database.star to username at host to grant select permissions. This command structure provides flexibility in controlling user access and specifying the level of permissions. In our next lesson, we'll discuss the with admin option, which allows users to manage permissions for others. After that, we'll create our first non-root DBA user, giving them specific permissions for more secure, limited access. I'll see you in the next part. Let's discuss on how we can create our first non-root DBA user who can log in from anywhere. Before we do that, let's just quickly look at the with grant option clause, which is used when creating a new user. It allows a user to grant their permissions to other users, which is essential for effective user management in MySQL. Typically, database administrators are responsible for creating other users and should have the ability to grant permissions. However, in some cases, DBAs may have full administrative rights but lack the ability to grant those rights to others due to not being created with the grant option. It is important to keep this in mind when creating a DB user that most of the time you're going to specify the with grant option clause to ensure flexibility in managing permissions and avoiding potential bottlenecks. Now let's create a DBA user with full privileges, including the ability to grant those privileges to others. We will grant all privileges on all objects with the grant option, making this user a super user with remote login capabilities. In this part, we're going to look at creating user accounts in MySQL. We'll cover how to create users, grant permissions, and manage user passwords. Let's dive in. If you were ever unsure about the syntax or options available for creating users in MySQL, you can always use the help command as shown here. We can see plenty of documentation for creating a user. This command provides detailed information about the create user statement, including its syntax and options. Let's create a user named Bob. This user will be a database administrator. We will ensure that this user is created only if they do not already exist. Set a password and configure the account to never expire. Here's the command. This part checks if the user already exists before creating it. This specifies the username and host from which the user can connect. You can change localhost to a specific IP address or use the wildcard character for any host. Identified by password at 123. This part of the command sets the password for the user. We would want to make sure in the work environment that we set a strong password. We use the option password expire never, which prevents the password from expiring, and account unlock, which unlocks the account if it was previously locked. Let's go ahead and run this. Now that we have created the user Bob, we need to grant him permissions to perform actions on the database. We will give him all privileges on all databases and tables, and also allow him to grant those privileges to others. This part of the command grants all permissions to the user. This part of the command specifies that the permissions apply to all databases. We put star dot star, so star means all databases, and then the dot, and then the star means the second star represents all tables. And we give that to Bob at localhost. Then we have the with grant option, so this allows the user Bob to grant the same privileges to other users. After granting privileges, it is essential to apply these changes so that they take effect. We do this by flushing the privileges. This flush privileges command reloads the grant tables in MySQL, ensuring that the changes we made are active immediately. Sometimes you may want to create a user whose password is set to expire immediately. This can be useful for enforcing password changes. Here's how we create a user named John with an expired password. This command is similar to creating the user as we do normally, but the password expire option at the end of the clause ensures that John will be prompted to change his password upon first login. We can log in with our new users now, doing MySQL --host equals a local host, and we can log in as user equals, we'll log in as John and with password. Or you just need to put the -p there. Put in his password. As you can see, after we logged in as John, when we try to run any command, we keep getting prompted that we must reset our password before executing any statement. In this tutorial, we covered how to create users in MySQL, grant permissions, and manage user passwords. Always remember to follow best practices for security, such as using strong passwords and granting the least privilege necessary. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next part. Okay guys, in this tutorial I'll just show you how to connect to your MySQL server from Workbench. In the workplace, a lot of times a lot of users are going to be using Workbench, so we should know how to connect to our remote servers using Workbench. So I'm going to open up Workbench, and it's pretty easy to download this. It's just a client tool, so I'm just going to call this EC2. We're going to use standard. Now the big thing is the host name, so in order to get the host name, I'm just going to use my the command I use to connect to my EC2 instance. So this right here is the digits of the IP address for me. So actually, yeah. So 18.188.137.139. 18.188.137.139. Next, first I'll log in as the root user, and I made sure to open up port 3306 so that it can listen for connections. I'll just quickly show you. First, you will log in. First, log into your EC2 instance. Okay, so this is the instance I'm using for my demos, and the main thing to note here is this is the IP address we're going to use. And if you go to security, you have to make sure port 336 is open to any IP address, otherwise your connection will fail to the server running on this EC2. So I'll log in as root first, because I think I made Bob only able to log in from localhost, so I didn't give him the permission to log in from any machine. So first I'll log in from root. My connection was successful. You just put in the root password that you set for your MySQL instance. Click OK, click OK, and we'll go to EC2. And one thing is I'll go to users and privileges, and there's Bob and there's John that we made earlier. Anyway, so that's logging into the MySQL server from using the MySQL workbench. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next part. I want to take this time to walk through the MySQL workbench graphical user interface. So this is also a very effective tool to administer and manage MySQL. And a lot of times the analysts will also be writing their queries from here and store procedures, manipulating the data and such, all from here. We have this panel. You're going to get your output down here whenever you compile your queries. Here you can compile the query of the whole page or whatever your cursor is selected. Here you can create a new database, new schema, and you can make your tables and your database structure. You can open and save SQL files. Here they have your schemas listed. There's our world DB and our test DB that we made earlier. We have the administration. So here a lot of good tools to diagnose and administer the server are here. So they give the host and then the version, the type of system, the directory of your socket file, all things that we've seen before. Your data directory, your plugins directory, your SSL, like your SSL certificate authority, whether any replication has been configured for the server, your error, if your error logging is on and where it gets logged to. Very helpful stuff for diagnosing and determining the current performance and troubleshooting problems. You can see how many connections there are, your traffic, the rate at which it's flowing, the bandwidth. You can also monitor your client connections. You can take a look. You can show the details of this client connection. You have the option to kill that connection or kill the query. You can see even more of the background threads. You can choose not to load the full thread info. You can determine the refresh rate. So again, very useful for administration. And if the server is having some problem, these are all very handy tools to troubleshoot it. Here's the users and privileges, where you will manage it as it says users and privileges. The CC2 is the name of your connection, and these are all of your different sessions you have open, if you were wondering. So we can take a look at the root. So that's my name. That's the authentication type. So there's only two. That's the authentication type. This is the host from which I can log in. So the wildcard character lets me log in from any host. This is my password. These are all the roles, so you don't need to give it programmatically administrating the roles. You can give it through this graphic user interface, which is very, very nice. You can also take a look at those status and system variables. We can look at their value and configure them from here, which is very nice. They're very important for the MySQL configuration and determining how MySQL behaves upon certain commands, and if we want it to behave in a certain way. Then you got the data export and import tool, which is important for backup and recovery. You have a dashboard, a visual dashboard to see the performance of the MySQL server, which is very useful. You have performance reports. You got your memory usage, your total memory. I got about a ½ gigabyte, which makes sense because I'm using the free tier EC2 instance, which only gives 1 gigabyte of RAM. So explore this interface. It's very thorough and very helpful for troubleshooting problems and very effective. There are plenty of DBAs that just do their work through the interface. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next part. Okay guys, just quickly, I was running into this error where where I was trying to give Bob the ability to log in from any host. So when I was running that command to change his permissions, I was getting this error. So changing it from add localhost to the wildcard, access is denied. You need at least one of the system privileges for this operation. So the way I fix that is I just granted the root user, which is myself, all privileges on all databases and tables with grant option. And then I was able to rename the user Bob from being able to only log in from localhost to any character. And then if I select users, now Bob can log in from any server, from any machine. Let's go ahead and create a user in the MySQL workbench. So we can just do create user Bill identified by password 12345, and we'll set the password to expire. When I use this will select whatever is highlighted. This will toggle the output window. We can see that our query was successful. We can go to users and privileges, and since our query was successful, we can close this window and reopen the users and privileges to see Bill has joined, and we don't need to expire his password because his password is expired and must change when on the next login. So we can go ahead and log in as Bill. So we'll call this Bill, and again we gotta copy our IP. This will be your IP to your perhaps dev or production environment servers. Instead we're gonna log in as Bill. We're gonna test the connection and give our password 12345 exclamation, and we should get prompted to reset the password using the alter user statement before executing this statement. So we'll hit OK, and it'll prompt us with a new password. So this is pretty straightforward. I'll also just show you how to use the alter user statement if you're in the shell. So we'll go into MySQL, we'll do MySQL -- host is equal to localhost, and user is equal to Bill, and -p. Oh wait, I was already in the MySQL shell. That's supposed to go here. Password. Now if we do show databases, we can't do anything without changing our password. We're continuously prompted. So in order to change it as it says, we just have to use the alter user statement. So alter user Bill identified. Make sure you spell it right. Identified by our new password. So password 123456789 exclamation. Identified doesn't have an N at the beginning. Put a semicolon, and there we go. Now Bill can do whatever he wants. So those are the two ways I meant to show databases. So those are the two ways. As you can see, it doesn't show all of them to him because he doesn't have the permissions on it, but those are the two ways that you can create a new user and force them to reset their password. This will be very common when you're administrating other users in MySQL. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next part. Welcome back. So let's give Bill some permissions so that he can select, update, insert, and manipulate the data. So first we can look at the users and privileges, and we can go to Bill, and we can go to administrative roles and schema privileges. So here we can select our schema that we're interested in giving privileges for. So let's say we want to go on world, and we want to just give select, insert, update, and delete, but you can't specify the table. You can only give on the whole schema. But so that's one of the drawbacks and one of the limits of the graphic user interface. So I'm not going to do that here, but if you were to give this, let's just say apply quickly from the GUI. I'm currently logged in from the shell. I'm logged in as Bill. So if I do show databases, notice Bill can't see the world database. And after I do this, if I click apply, and if I go back here, and if I do show databases, Bill can now see the world and show tables. He can see, if I do use world and show tables, he sees all the tables. But let's say, what if I only wanted him to be able to see city? I can't control that from the graphic user interface, this GUI for the user administration. So let's go ahead and delete this entry and apply that. Now Bill can't see anything, show tables, or if I exit and I log back in as Bill, password, and if I show databases, now he won't be able to see it anymore. So I have this command, so we want to grant select insert update delete, but we're only going to do it on world dot, let's say, continents to Bill. So he's only going to be able to see world dot continents. So this is Bill's grants before I execute this command. So you can see, and then after I execute it. So now he has insert update delete on world.continent. So if we go back here and we're logged in as Bill, if we show databases, now he can see world. So if we use world and if we show tables, he's only able to see the one continent. So that's giving privileges and permissions in using the MySQL workbench, and seeing how that affects what the user can see in on their end of the user interface. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next part. In this tutorial, I just want to introduce you to an important concept of account locking and unlocking. So sometimes you need to lock users out of the account. So we can use this query here where we're selecting data from the mysql.user table. This table stores all the data, all of the user and privilege data. So this is a very useful table to query. We're querying the host user plugin, password expired, if it's true or false, an account locked. So we can see which accounts are locked and which accounts aren't locked at the moment, and whether the password has expired. So we could see for John, they can log in from any host and his passwords expire, but Bill's isn't, and none of their accounts are locked, but these internal accounts are locked, so nobody can log in from them. So let's alter Bill's account and lock it quickly. So let's do this. Now if we do another query, we'll see Bill's account is locked. So if Bill tries to log in, let's go and exit. Now let's log in as Bill. And access is denied, account is locked. Now, just as we can lock it, we can just as easily unlock it. So let's quickly unlock it. Successful. And we can do this query again. Bill is still locked. Why? Okay, Bill is now no longer locked. I must not have clicked it properly. So we just do this. And Bill is now unlocked. Now let's see if he can log in. And he can log in just fine. So that's account locking and unlocking. This is important to know for user administration. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next part. Today we'll explore how roles can simplify security management in MySQL databases. What are MySQL roles? So MySQL roles are a feature introduced in MySQL 8.0 that allow database administrators to manage user privileges more effectively. Instead of assigning privileges to users individually, you can group them into roles, which simplifies the process of managing access rights. The use of roles in MySQL brings several benefits. First, they simplify privilege management by allowing you to handle multiple privileges as a single entity. This enhances security by ensuring that users have the minimum necessary access to perform their tasks. Additionally, roles make it easier to assign and revoke privileges, saving time and reducing the chance of errors. To create a role in MySQL, you use the create role statement. For example, to create a role named developer, you would write create role developer. This role can be assigned specific privileges. After creating a role, you can grant it privileges using the grant statement. For instance, if you want to allow the developer role to perform select and insert operations on all tables in a specific database, you would use the command grant select insert on database.star to developer. Once a role is created and privileges are assigned, you can grant that role to users. For example, if you want to assign the developer role to a user named Alice, you would execute grant developer to Alice. Alice would now have all privileges associated with that role. To activate a role that has been assigned to a user, you use the set role statement. For instance, by executing set role developer, that user will now operate with the privileges granted to the developer role. If you need to remove a role from a user, you can do so with the revoke statement. For instance, to revoke the developer role from Alice, you would use the command revoke developer from Alice. This action will remove all privileges associated with that role from Alice. As you can see, MySQL roles provide a powerful mechanism for managing user privileges. They streamline the process of granting and revoking access rights, enhance security, and reduce administrative overhead. Implementing roles is particularly beneficial in larger environments where multiple users interact with the database. Let's go through a demo on how to set up roles in MySQL, assign permissions to those roles, and then create users who will be assigned these roles. Using roles in MySQL is a great way to manage user permissions more efficiently, especially if you have multiple users who need similar access rights. So first, MySQL has a help command, which can be useful to check the syntax for creating roles. Let's confirm how to create roles with the help create role command. Remember, the help command brings up the current documentation based on the keywords you write. Now we're going to create 3 different roles: reader, writer, and admin. Each role will have its own set of permissions, which makes it easier to manage access at different levels. We will enter the following command: create role if not exists, and then our 3 roles: reader, writer, and admin. With our roles created, the next step is to assign permissions to each one. We'll start with the reader role. Since this role is for users who only need to read data, we're going to grant it select permissions on a specific table called the world.continents. So here's the command: we'll grant select on world.continents to the one who to this reader role. Next, let's assign permissions to the writer role. This role is for users who need to make changes, so we'll give it insert, update, and delete permissions on the same table. So we'll enter grant insert, update, delete on world.continents to writer. Finally, the admin role will have full access to the world database. This means the user assigned to this role can read, write, and make any changes across all tables within the world database. We will grant all on world.star. Remember, this star represents all the tables to the admin role. Let's double check that each role has the correct permissions assigned. To do this, we'll use the show grants to review permissions for each role. Let's start with the reader role, next the writer role, and finally the admin role. This is a great way to verify that each role has the expected permissions before we move on to creating users. Now let's create the users who will be assigned these roles. We'll create 3 users: a DB reader, a DB writer, and a DB admin, and we'll set passwords for each one. Let's start with the DB reader user. So we'll create user if not exists, a DB reader, identified with this simple password. Next, let's make the DB writer. Finally, we'll make the DB admin. Again, we're using if not exists to ensure that these commands won't cause errors if the user already exists. With our users created, we can now assign the roles to each user, which will automatically give them the correct permissions. Let's start by assigning the reader role to the DB reader. Next, we can assign the writer role to the DB writer. Finally, we'll assign the admin role to the DB admin. And at this point, each user has been assigned a role with the specific permissions we set up earlier. The last thing we should do is flush the privileges to make sure all of our changes take effect immediately. Let's enter flush privileges. And that's it. Now we've successfully created roles, assigned permissions to those roles, created users, and granted each user a role. This setup makes managing permissions much simpler, especially when you have multiple users who need similar access. So we created the roles reader, writer, and admin, assigned permissions to each role based on what level of access they needed, created users who were assigned these roles, and then flushed the privileges to apply the changes. This concludes the demo. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.